members a chance to leave the meeting. Move on to the special meeting of the Glendale City Council. And again, to help to slow this is the Glendale special meeting on December 14th, being called to order at 2:23. And again, to slow the transmission of COVID and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council and board and commission meetings will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. You are encouraged to watch on Glendale TV, Spectrum TV, ATT Uverse, and Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV. If you have comments during the meeting or questions, call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when that agenda item is discussed. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Rotman.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
And Mayor Devine.
Here, in your report.
The agenda for the Tuesday, December 14, 2021 special public meeting of the City Council is posted on December 7, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item.
B1, community development regarding update on Verdugo Wash visioning process. 1A, motion to provide input and feedback to staff regarding the current stage of the visioning process for the Verdugo Wash project, and note and file the report.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I will be recusing myself from this matter due to the fact that my wife has an interest in real estate within 500 feet of the proposed project. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Najarian. Mr. Galanian.
Yes,
Carry on.
Mayor, Devine, members, City Council. As you know, this project's been in the works for a while, and staff recently concluded an extensive outreach with stakeholders and started the process of developing early concepts and ideas that Bradley Calvert, Deputy Director of Community Development, will present to you, as well as introducing consultant who's worked on these concept designs. Bradley.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Joining me this afternoon is our design team from Melk and their sub-consultant team, Howell, working on engineering and transportation. And we are here this afternoon to give you an update on the visioning process. As mentioned, we have done some public engagement. There is still much more to do, but we wanted to be able to bring forward to council and ultimately to the community and stakeholders some of these initial concepts that represent what is possible with the Verdugo Wash. And I want to emphasize that portion is that these are early concept. There's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of pieces to figure out. But it does start to give us a clearer picture of what could happen within that wash, though there's still much refinement that will need to be done in regards to design, safety, engineering, cost. So this really represents kind of the first pieces that are put on paper. And what we're looking for today is just some feedback and general input on what you may think of the design, things to consider. We'll go through some of the public engagement we have done, some of the public engagement that is still to be done, and then we'll turn this over to our design team so that they can give you an overview of the concepts. So again, overview of the public engagement. We have done some surveys through the project website, some of the initial analysis that's been done, what we call the freeboard analysis, some feedback we received from our internal working group. We put together members from police, fire, sustainability, parks, and community services to help kind of shape and mold and also help us guide the project to answer their concerns and their questions. And then some ideas on some next steps and some timelines and when we may be back in front of council. So public engagement today, we have been limited in terms of the number of public meetings we've been able to engage in. That's for a variety of factors, but the pandemic is definitely one of them. To supplement that, we have worked to put surveys on our project website so that we can get feedback and try to reach the broadest audience we possibly can. As part of those questions, we do ask what neighborhood residents are from, whether they live here, whether they work here, all in the hope of being able to kind of drill down neighborhood by neighborhood, because as you are aware, the Verdugo Wash will touch many neighborhoods, I believe up to 14, if I'm not mistaken. And being able to understand and design accordingly to each one of those neighborhoods will be essential. So our surveys have tried to reflect that, which we'll cover here in a minute. We did an initial survey to kind of understand what the priorities were, if there were support for the project. We have another survey that's ongoing now that is intended to emulate some of the in-person engagement that we had intended to do, some that we will still plan to do with many neighborhoods and stakeholders. This project is also being informed by a stakeholder working group. They're listed off to the right are the members of that group, which also includes city staff. That includes public works, community development, urban design, mobility, parks, community services, a number of different working divisions to help kind of shape and inform this design as well. But those that are on the stakeholder working group were selected because they could offer a particular type of insight to this, whether it was sustainability, impacts to businesses, impacts to residents, lessons learned. We have members from the Friends of Los Angeles River and also LA River Works to help us understand some of the challenges they may have experienced with the Los Angeles River Revitalization Project. And then also regional significance. We include Southern California Association of Governments as part of that as well. But to get a broad overview and understanding of concerns, opportunities, lessons learned, things of that nature. We've held 2 meetings to date thus far. We'll cover some of those comments towards the end and what we've kind of heard from them as part of our internal stakeholder discussion as well. In terms of our initial survey that we put out, we had asked a number of questions of what the priorities were for this project, whether or not they supported the idea of transforming the Verdugo Wash. In total, we received 725 responses. The pie chart that you see there is a breakout of where people are from. The highest respondent rate came from Crescenta Highlands, Whiting Woods, Montrose neighborhoods, and then you can see as that moves down through other neighborhoods, the response rate for each of them. We had asked each of them the same kind of questions, what was important to them, where their priorities were if they supported the project. We used what we consider the neighborhood services map for neighborhoods. It does not include every single neighborhood that is identified in the city, but it does include the neighborhoods that are identified by our neighborhood services team. So some neighborhoods, as we have heard, are actually embedded in some of these groups as well. And that was an opportunity by breaking these out into neighborhoods and keeping it into a kind of manageable number and a manageable level allowed us to be able to kind of pinpoint and identify any of the concerns that were there and hopefully to address that through our design process as we continue to move through this project. 44% of the respondents also worked in Glendale. That includes a large majority of those who did not live in Glendale. There are also those that did work there. And that's an important thing to note because this project is not just for those who happen to live here, but also who do work here, those that do visit here as well. This is intended to be an overall community asset. We also asked the question, what attributes are important to you? And we asked this on a scale of not important at all to very important. Important each topic is. Following that survey, we came to identify that public safety, natural habitat restoration, the creation of new open space, and pedestrian and cyclist routes were the most important elements. Public safety leading the way. That's an important one to note because as we'll discuss towards the end, after meeting with our internal working group, we've identified a number of strategies and solutions that can ensure the safety of this project, ensure the safety of the neighborhoods that it will touch. But we do recognize the importance of that, maintaining that this is a safe environment, as well as one that is functional from an open space perspective and an active transportation perspective. And lastly, we had asked the question, do you support a reimagined Verdugo Wash? We asked this on a scale of 1 to 5. The answer on that, or the average on that, came out to be a 4.0 out of 5. So relatively strong support from those that answered. Again, we had about 725 responses to that survey, and we have another one that's ongoing now. We don't have a lot of those results compiled on the second survey, but this one really started to dig in a little bit deeper into what kind of design, what kind of environment or atmosphere would someone like to see from this project. And this is just kind of a summary of one of the kind of key questions that we asked. This was something that was intended to be done in person. Again, pandemic has kind of restricted our ability and some willingness to participate in this, so we tried to emulate this in a reduced scale version on our website. But it's essentially we gave 10 images, and you can see kind of a wide variety of environments that are created here. The one in the top left is a very natural environment. Much more about the natural habitat, habitat restoration, if you will, in relationship to our project. And then you see some others there that incorporate very social aspects, very social elements, artistic elements, iconic bridges, iconic designs, things of that nature. And what we did is we asked everyone first, what neighborhood are you from? And then how much do you believe one of these images on a scale of about, I believe it was 1 to 10, it was 1 to 10, is something that you would like to see in your neighborhood. And what we got from total, and this hasn't been broken out by neighborhoods, was these 4 images really kind of rising to the top. And I believe that as we walk through some of these early design concepts, you will see many of these threads incorporated into the actual early visions that are there. Again, that top left image really ranking as the highest. That was by far and away the most popular. People wanted to see a much more passive environment. They wanted to see something that had a lot of vegetation incorporated into it. And then the rest are focused on kind of open space, active transportation options, the lower right with pedestrians, the upper right focused on cyclists. So what I'd like to do here is turn this over to Jerry Van Eyck, principal of Melk, our lead design team, and he is going to walk you through some of the analysis, and then he's going to walk you through some of the early design concepts that we've developed, and then we'll wrap up with some of our comments about the internal stakeholder working group.
Thanks, Bradley. Hello, good afternoon. So yeah, the Fiducial Wash, a 9-mile long encased concrete floodwater channel running between the north side of the Fiducial Mountains to the Griffith Park area, let's say. It's entirely located within the city boundaries of Glendale, and it runs through different neighborhoods. And while saying this, it almost sounds like it's a connector, right? And it should be, and it could be. But in its current form, the Fiducial Wash is really a divider, and we consider it a scar in the fabric of the city. The premise of this project for us, based on the act of erasing that scar, is to unlock incredible opportunities for improving the city by creating connections and improving the mobility infrastructure, establishing a whole series of new addresses for new program, increasing the value of properties adjacent to it, establishing a large democratic multi-district amenity space that can instigate growth in the community, improvements in a location where improvements were maybe unexpected for many decades or not even considered before, but they can really impact the quality of living in Glendale in a positive way. Besides this, of course, the wash will maintain its full function as a piece of hydrological infrastructure. Next slide. So this is us, the project team in the wash. Our team consists of landscape architects, urban designers, mobility specialists. We have our friends from Bureau Happold on the line, sustainability experts. Once again, I see Chris here in my little screen. Hydrology engineers. We have Ali on the line, who is our biologist and ecology specialist. So this is us visiting the wash, being in the wash. We've traversed the entire 9-mile here. Of course, this is in the basin area, and this is part of us mapping out and studying the entire situation. Next slide, please. We hope really soon that all of you, maybe together we can organize something, but that we all have the opportunity to go into the wash and experience the space, because it will undoubtedly clarify for everyone what the potential for the project is by seeing and experiencing. Next. So, these are, of course, only excerpts of our very thick deck of study by now. It shows, our study to understand the current basin. We mapped out all the different sections and different conditions and relationship to the adjacent neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. Next one. There are already a number of access points, which are for maintenance today mainly. We studied also other locations where it might be feasible to increase access, where it makes sense to create this direct moments of connectivity across, right, to the adjacent neighborhoods. Next slide. This diagram is made by our mobility specialists. It communicates that if the wash becomes a corridor for micro-mobility and bicycles, and pedestrians, of course, that it would dramatically affect the overall commuting times throughout Glendale in a positive way as well. Next. Lastly, like Bradley already said, the project would restitch the urban ecology and wildlife habitat in the area as well. Very important. Next slide. So the big idea, really, we try to basically summarize that in the following 2 slides. Go next. Currently, as we all know, the existing channel of the wash is a very uninspiring concrete channel, yeah? And it was encased in the 30s in this massive amount of concrete that basically, of course, functions seasonally as a stormwater drain, but for the rest is just there. And like I said earlier, it's kind of a no man's land, and it grew into the city. But this is for sure the opportunity to establish this sea change for Glendale. Next. And this is basically what we're trying to do, right? Is the same concrete channel. Maybe you can go back, Bradley, and go to this slide again. Yeah, the same concrete channel. Yeah, and you can see in the colored dotted line is our study and assessment of the water levels, the high water levels in these different seasons, ranging from an annual to, let's say, the 200-year floodplain. So there is room inside the channel itself right now with the hydrology engineering, let's say, of the storm water still intact underneath on the lower level, let's say in a crawl space, quote unquote, underneath a new green linear corridor, which can become a signature public space with an identity that has to speak, of course, to many audiences, with program and activities for the multiple communities, with micro-mobility routes, and of course, a surprise or two. Next. So part of understanding the capacity has been for us to study the actual volumes of water that are projected to run through the channel, and we have presented our findings and really achieved sort of this level of alignment with LA County Public Works, as well as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, right? To really understand what we call freeboard, which is to say that available volume in the concrete channel to design into this linear green corridor. Next. And while maintaining the hydrologic function is just part of it, we of course want to establish an amenity for the community or the multiple communities that ultimately is meaningful and makes sense. So if we go to the, oh, sorry. Before we go to, no, I think we've learned from some of our own projects, but also from other projects around the country and also around the world, that, these similar initiatives, and we focus mainly on like linear situations. And each of these projects, and there are many more, are case studies, right? Case studies that we can basically draw the data from, and the data that talks about the ROIs of this kind of project in terms of like the payback to the community, not just monetarily, of course, monetarily and economically, but also, let's say, for the future benefit of the city proper. Each one of these projects are very political. They're really signature almost like legacy projects for each of these cities that these were made in. Very well known are the Beltline Atlanta, of course the High Line right here in New York, and on the right bottom is our own project in Miami Beach. And it's easy for us to draw the data from that shows, for example, all the economic development that got triggered and spurred, and the growth throughout the city because of the initial investment and ultimately the design of this unique public amenity spaces. So we're not alone, but definitely we have the opportunity to create something unique. Next. So here's just like Bradley mentioned earlier, a couple of like first impressions. Very early, right? But it gives you an understanding of what the possibilities are. Go to the next, please. So this is, let's say, more in the northern area of the Wash, where it's kind of narrow. It gets much wider the more we get close to the LA River, to the let's say the confluence point at the southern tip of the Wash. But imagine that you can still recognize the concrete basin, let's say, and that artificial floor of nature and that pedestrian pathway running through it. Underneath it, still is the stormwater space, right? So it's really almost like a roof deck structure, let's say, but of course with a fully fledged natural park on top of that, with the water running underneath it. This gives you an idea of where it's narrow. Of course, we're not creating a sort of like sort of situation where bicycles and micromobility conflict with pedestrians. No, of course, pedestrians are prioritized. The bikes will have to go to an adjacent piece of land, the adjacent right-of-way that we happen to have available in this northern stretch. And this is an example of one of those new get-downs, right? The way that it could look, and the way that it's easy for people to go into the Wash, and like we did a couple of months ago, maybe traverse the entire 9 miles. Next slide, please. Once again, that same area maybe is slightly wider here, but you can see a lot of new growth, new vegetation, trees, plants, etc., that really match the adjacent plant palette as well. And for example, that right image you see is sort of another function is of course lateral connectivity, and not just longitudinal, let's say, through the Wash. Next. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, okay, cool. So this, yeah, perfect. Of course, this is an area where the Wash is a lot wider, and we have many more opportunities. You can see even a sort of like a more sort of quiet, contemplative park-like space on the left side, the micromobility route in the middle, and then separated from it a pedestrian walkway. Right? Really a tranquil space that is very appropriate in certain areas. Next. And here, once again, the same situation with, imagine the water, stormwater running in that quote-unquote crawl space, let's say, underneath, right, which is tailored to all our dimensioned data that we have, that we really need for when there's a flash flood. But on top of that, in this case, it's very wide, right? More like a plaza situation, more shared street condition for activities, for people to traverse through, etc. Next. And this is an example of, in this case, it's a playground, but it could be something else of what it could look like if all of a sudden there's an activity or a piece of, let's say, public space program also present in the wash, right? Which is kind of like this unique situation that can be, really shared by the adjacent communities, left and right, or east and west, I should say, that all of a sudden get stitched together. Next. And here's just more of the possibilities. This is in the area, let's say, where the golf course is. Actually, on that right side, you saw the image of us, the team, earlier at the basin. But here you can see us, going over that dam and continuing the journey. It's almost like it's a bunch of trails, right, that are situated in the wash. Next. Okay, here it's get really interesting. This is more the more south we get, let's say, the more urban the adjacency of the wash is, obviously. Right. So here, this is an example of where we have a get down into the wash, which has a sort of vertical marker on top of it, a very recognizable, almost iconic object, that we designed, and it's kind of, let's say, metaphor for what the wash really is. It's like a piece of, like, say, wilderness flowing through the city, and underneath that get down, an opportunity for example, a concession pavilion, right, with the walkways walking by it, a small plaza in front of it, and needless to say, still underneath in that space, the wash as a sort of functioning piece of hydrological infrastructure. Next slide, please. Anyway, you get the idea. You see that same situation from the other side. You see actually a person on a bicycle coming down into the wash, right, and taking the corridor as a shortcut through the city. Next one. And this is another condition with another example of one of those vertical markers. It's almost like an entrance canopy, let's say, creating a sort of small entrance plaza into the wash, which we think contributes to the recognizability of the place as well. So all in all, we think we have the start of the design cues for us to create the Verdugo Wash into this unique amenity, this unique public space, this long linear green corridor that'll definitely draw some attention to Glendale. That's it for my portion. Bradley?
Thank you, Jerry. And as we get into some of the other feedback we've heard, again, I want to emphasize these are early concepts. There's still a lot of work to go. You'll notice we didn't get into very location-specific. Actually, could you leave that up? Or there's still a few more slides to go through. This was really just designing to the width, the actual infrastructure itself, not really responding to specific location at this point. What we would like to be able to do is take these concepts, now go back to some of these neighborhoods, now that we have something on paper that we can reference, and start to figure out how we can tailor these and modify these to those specific locations, those very specific neighborhoods, because that is something that was very important to this project, is to design sensitively to the surrounding context that's there. So this gives us a starting reference point on paper. Again, this is an iterative process. We'll continue to refine and work through that. Also, even with the location of the access points, that is something that will be determined through those discussions, through those neighborhoods, if there's a desired location for an access point where it should be. As mentioned, as part of this, we have assembled an internal working group as well as our stakeholder advisory working group that was made up of those original members. Some of the feedback that we have heard through those discussions, opportunities for us to be able to capture and treat stormwater was important. There has been a very strong desire to create what would be referred to as a soft riverbed. The idea of taking out the base of the Verdugo Wash, returning that to a natural state. Our design team could speak to that more, but essentially, it was determined that it was most likely not feasible because that is not the location of a true river in the same sense that maybe the LA River was, and that it would not be able to support the type of habitat that would be necessary for a soft river bottom. That is one of the reasons why you are seeing this raised platform. Also, the ability to maintain the flood control function of the Verdugo Wash is absolutely essential. We also heard some comments from the internal or the stakeholder advisory working group ensuring equity to make sure that this matches up well with our pedestrian plan, our bicycle plan, our overall mobility plans to ensure that this is something that is accessible to all residents, improves quality of life, improves access to open space, improves overall connectivity and mobility. When we spoke with our internal working group, and that's made up of our city staff, our police and fire, what we wanted to do there was to look at these concepts and then take some of the comments that we have heard from the neighborhoods and see how we could potentially address those. And one of the biggest that we had heard actually was, if this will, give me 1 second here, make sure this is working. No, it's not, I just want to make sure I'm on the right slide actually. There we go. One of the biggest concerns we heard from the public was public safety. Now that we're potentially introducing something in here that brings pedestrians and cyclists into their neighborhood in areas before that were not accessible to people, public safety has been one of the biggest concerns. In talking with police and talking with fire, they had developed a number of ideas and concepts on how we could ensure that would continue to exist in the channel. The first off is being able to make sure that we could provide access to police motorcycles in the case of incidents, that there was enough width within this channel that a police officer on a motorcycle would be able to access it. The design as of now does accommodate that and will continue to accommodate that going forward. Something we've heard from both our internal working group, but also LA County Flood Control, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, is that this should have operating hours. That would be on kind of a dawn to dusk cycle similar to any other park in the city. Also, insignificant rain events. Today is a perfect example. This would actually be shut down. That would have to be a requirement per LA County Flood Control and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers feedback. This would need to shut down on these kind of significant rain events. It would be designed to withstand it, but it should not be accessible to people. Also, to try to ensure the safety of this facility, police call boxes, potentially a limited bicycle patrol. If we can identify opportunities for funding for public safety in general, we could have dedicated patrols to it. But also the fact that this runs parallel to many streets in many locations does provide a visibility from parallel and adjacent streets as well. And then lighting. Again, one of those kind of design components, we're just not at that level yet. We are very, very early on, but lighting will be a key component of that as well. Another idea that was discussed and kind of floated was looking at what other cities have done and having ambassadors that will help maintain, will help patrol, help report when there are incidents that would be able to walk and bicycle up and down the route. So a lot of different layers that can go into this project in terms of making sure that this remains a safe environment. Again, that was the #1 comment we heard in our survey. Even with very strong support, it was still the #1 comment, something we're very cognizant and aware of, and ultimately will be designed into this. Other comments we heard, I'll actually skip down to the lower bullet point first, was fire. If we're going to introduce this kind of level of vegetation in certain neighborhoods, that may increase fire risk. In discussion with Glendale Fire, if we follow the requirements for a high fire hazard area, that will help mitigate those concerns. And then doing regular brush clearing and maintenance. Those are things that we'll also work out as we have these discussions with Parks and Community Services on how we'd be able to do that. As part of that working group was also our Office of Sustainability, and brought up some very unique opportunities. This is a great opportunity for ecological education. We've also heard that from several residents. We've heard that from Glendale Community College, that they would like to see opportunities and moments along this route to learn about the facility, what was there prior, its role in the entire ecological system in Southern California and Los Angeles. But to also look at sustainable construction materials. There are many ways that can be done. Cross-laminated timber is one. Fire resistant, but also is very sustainable in many ways. They also echo the same comments that we heard from our stakeholder advisory working group, stormwater collection and management, and also the comments about equity. How do we provide access to those that maybe they didn't have access before? And overall, just public health. the benefits of mental and physical public health, the ability to get outdoors, to get exercise, to bicycle and ride. I think those are all things that we have learned, especially during this pandemic, and the role that could play in the city's public health in general. So next steps. What we plan to do from here is kind of hit pause on design. Again, the concepts here are intended to be exactly that, very early concepts. A reference point for us to return to neighborhoods, go to new neighborhoods, and have a reference point to talk to. Have a graphic representation of what we have relied pretty much just on words for to convey and get feedback, whether that's about safety, design, access points, interaction with adjacent properties, things of that nature. These are by no means in any way a final design. This is a very iterative process, and we'll be back in front of council several times before we wrap this up. We'll be back in front of many neighborhoods before we wrap this up, continuing to evolve the design in response to those comments. So we'll revisit those neighborhoods. We are currently working out other engagement activities after the first of the year with other neighborhoods, and also looking at doing larger citywide events, especially in downtown, especially in South Glendale. We'll take this information and these graphics, we will update on the website, we will update our input so that people can provide input there as well for those that may not want to participate in an in-person public meeting, and we'll follow that up with an email blast to our subscribers, which currently I believe we're well over 400 or 500 at this point on the website. But again, we will refine this design. We will bring this back to LA County Flood Control, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, our stakeholder advisory working group, and as mentioned, the general public. And we'll return to council as well as we continue to refine these. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I think it's particularly important today, given today's rain event, and some of the questions that were brought up early on by some in the public, some of our working groups, is how would this withstand and survive and adapt to a condition like today? Strong, heavy rains. As we mentioned, this would be a facility that would be closed. What I'd like to be able to emphasize is that this can be designed in a fashion that can withstand these kind of events. And I use this as an example. This is a parking lot of part of the Atlanta Beltline. This is a project that we've referenced many times as we see a lot of parallels. Older infrastructure, repurposing that into a community facility, opportunities to restore natural habitat. But this was an old parking lot that existed at a Sears warehouse facility. Ultimately, it was turned into this to accommodate a stormwater drainage issue that was originally going to cost the city well north of $40 million. But by creating this park and this natural habitat, they actually were able to do it for about half the price, if not less. But more importantly, this park itself is actually designed to withstand the storm events and the flooding events that occur here. The materials that are selected are intended to be submerged. The park will close during times when it cannot be used, whether it's a 50, 100, 500-year rain event that occurs. It is designed to withstand that. And that's the exact kind of approach that will be taken as part of this design to ensure its kind of viability and its sustainability in that kind of environment. So from there, we'll conclude, and we're happy to answer any questions that the council may have. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Milk and Mr. Calvert. I'd like to, do we have phone calls, Mr. Jamian?
Madam Mayor, I have 6 callers on the line.
Let's take the callers first before we get into discussion, please.
Patrick Murphy, you have 3 minutes. Patrick, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again as regards the Verdugo Wash visioning. I am now calling on behalf of the Verdugo Wash Neighborhoods Coalition. This coalition was formed by residents who are directly affected by the project, and the coalition will be addressing the Verdugo Wash path and only the Verdugo Wash path. Communication issues persist. As I mentioned during one of your previous council meetings back about 4 to 6 weeks ago, the communication is just not happening. Many people that are directly affected by this have not been informed and are just learning of the project. During 2 of the meetings, the outreach meetings, which we appreciate Mr. Calvert's attendance at that and chairing those, we talked to direct mail pieces to the property owners that are directly affected by this project. We were told it was too expensive. We recently heard from a resident who received 4 of the individual postcards for the sound wall that is proposed up on the freeway, on the 210 freeway. 4 of those postcards went to one resident. There's something wrong with the mail system, and we really should have a direct mail piece sent so that people know that there's a special council meeting at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, so perhaps they can take a break from work to participate or to watch it live streaming, and we do appreciate the live stream opportunity during this pandemic. There was mention of the Stakeholder Advisory Working Group. We have no representation in this advisory group in our neighborhoods. The unfairness of property owners that are shut out, we need greater representation. Special interest groups sitting on the city's committee have advanced knowledge and access to staff and council and have sent action alerts to their members for support callers. We're not in the mix on this, and we're not getting communicated with appropriately. Also, in the outreach portion of the report, there is no mention in the report on the Whiting Woods and the Sycamore Woods opposition at the outreach meetings. There was consistent and overwhelming opposition, so that the survey that was taken, that there were 700 plus respondents, it is not an accurate representation of the neighborhood that will be directly affected by this.
Thank you,
because
Patrick.
the neighborhood.
Thank you, Patrick. Your 3 minutes is up.
Well, let me just say one last thing. This coalition
ahead.
is categorically opposed to this project in our area and insists that all of our concerns and issues are heard. And again, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Patrick. Next.
Paul Rabinoff. Paul, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Paul Rabinoff, Mayor and City Council. I'm calling in support of the current stage of the Verdugo Wash Visioning Project. The concept starts from the fact that the wash was designed to provide safety from flooding and absolutely must continue to do so, and ingeniously create space within the wash for public use and enjoyment. In doing so, the wash can be envisioned as a more than 9-mile linear open space with opportunities for parkland, active transportation, habitat restoration, and community spaces. The ability to introduce landscape and natural elements to the current concrete area can literally create a 9-mile greenway that connects the entire city. This project will literally transform the city and unite its communities in a way that no other project can. I also want to compliment the city. I'm aware there have been at least 3 community meetings held thus far, and that there are quite a number in the works. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Next.
Steve Mosser, you have 3 minutes. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to call in today. I appreciate that. I don't need 3 minutes. I'm calling from what you've just identified as no man's land up here in Whiting Woods. And my question is to Bradley. Hello, Bradley. Nice to see you again. Merry Christmas to all of you. Bradley, you did mention the meetings that we had in Whiting Woods and in Sycamore Woods in September and October of this year. But what you did not mention was the response from the 80 households and homeowners we had in Whiting Woods and the 70 we had in Sycamore Woods. So could you just kindly take my 2.5 minutes that are left and tell the City Council the type of response you got from those homeowners? And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Next caller.
Ellen Asadorian, you have 3 minutes. Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for this opportunity. I understand that this is a preliminary report, but I'm interested to learn what efforts have been done to conduct outreach in Armenian, Spanish, Tagalog, Korean, and other languages to ensure the survey results are reflective of our diverse communities. We have a population close to 200,000, and having 725 responses, particularly in the age where we can utilize social media, is concerning to me. If efforts haven't been conducted, please let me know what efforts are in place for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Jack Walworth, you have 3 minutes. Jack, go ahead.
Hello, City Council and project team. My name's Jack Walworth, and I've been riding my bike around Glendale since moving here 26 years ago. I've traveled around the world many times and always enjoy riding a bike to take in the culture of our human pace. I'm calling to support these efforts in every way. I recently sold my car and upgraded to an electric bike and applaud the way to improve bicycle routes. Any way we can improve bicycle routes. It's great to go out of our way a little bit and enjoy the city while commuting and running errands. From a little I've seen and much more today, this is an amazing project running through the diverse heart of Glendale. This alternative throughway would be an inspiration for those of us who are on the verge of leaving our cars behind and jumping on bikes. Great project, can't wait to see it blossom. Thank you.
Thank you. One more?
I have another 5 more.
Okay, go ahead.
Paul Day, you have 3 minutes. Paul, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Paul Day.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes,
You have 3 minutes.
My name is Paul Day, and every time I look at this, it sort of makes me wonder. When I see the access points, actually I see my backyard, and I've never received anything from the city at all that this project was going to happen. When it was originally proposed in 2012, I went down my neighborhood with a petition. Everybody signed it. The city threw the petitions out. It was just disregarded completely. And now I'm looking at this, and I'm watching the river. I've been here 30-some years at this property, and I've seen it almost overflow a few times. So even if you put a deck in that wash, at some point the wash is going to take everything out. I've seen boulders the size of trash bills go down the wash, and I just don't see how this is going to be safe for anybody down in that canal. It is a flood canal, not a bicycle path. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not an eyesore. It protects everybody that lives along this from keeping their houses from being flooded. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next caller.
Jennifer Pinkerton, you have 3 minutes. Jennifer, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I wholly support this concept. I think this is the type of feature and amenity that is sorely lacking in Glendale. And thank you for considering it, and I hope we proceed full speed ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next
Brenna Kinsola. Brenna, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Brenna Kinsola. I'm just calling, thank you for this time. I'm calling in support of this Verdugo Wash Visioning project. I'm a cyclist in Glendale, and I feel like every time I ride somewhere and I try to cut down on a car ride, think of the environment, think of my community, I feel like I'm taking my life into my hands. And looking at the wash, this open space that connects everything, it's really exciting to me to think that it could be a safe place for cyclists and pedestrians. I work at a bike shop in Burbank, and it's amazing to see how many people who aren't your typical cyclist, how many people feel comfortable riding on the Chandler bike path or places like that in Burbank. And I think it's really exciting to think that older people who don't feel safe on the road might have a place to exercise. Kids will have a place where they can get moving and have fun and ride to their friend's house. And I'm really excited at the prospect of different neighborhoods getting connected and letting people get around on bikes and by foot without encountering cars. One thing is I really hope there are a lot of access points, because if it's hard to get onto the path, people won't use it. And so I think it's really important to make it easy for people to get on from anywhere in their neighborhood. And I'm just really excited to think about increasing biking and walking mobility without inconveniencing cars, because it's still sometimes like people are so attached to their cars that it stops them from thinking about other progress. And being able to do this without slowing car traffic is really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Diane Martin.
Yes, my name is Diane Martin. Thank you very much.
You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Bradley, I was also part, I think Stephen mentioned, of the meeting with Whitey Woods. I am on the vice president for the Mountain Oaks Homeowners Association, And I too, Bradley, would like you to voice the great concern, all the people at that meeting. I believe there was probably several hundred people from the community available there and voicing, concerns about what that would do to the neighborhoods, the community, the high fire risk area, and the disruption to those neighborhoods that wash is right next to. So, Bradley, if you would please express that to the people, that all those concerns that came out of that meeting, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
John Howell, you have 3 minutes, John. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm on the working group. I represent the Arroyos and Foothills Conservancy and appreciate the opportunity to speak. At the outset, staff described the picture that resonated the most with those people that responded to the questionnaire. And out of all those pictures, it was said that by far the natural habitat was the most desirable image that really resonated with people. We hear about restoring natural habitat, ecological restoration, ecological education. We hear about restitching wildlife habitat. But in the end, staff again says that in response to the working groups asking about water capture and about creating a soft riverbed, he says it can't do it because it's really not a river, I guess is what's being said. So I'm concerned that the historic nature of the Verdugo Wash is being ignored. It's an ephemeral stream, and of course it can have suitable riparian habitat. And we acquire natural open space in Glendale. We've acquired any number of parcels, and we're in the business of restoring natural habitat. So I would just question whether we're headed in the right direction. I hear no conversation about wildlife or about restoring nature or taking the great opportunity that the LA River folks are doing and the Arroyo Seco folks are doing to look to bring back some aspect of a natural setting and a natural stream. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alec Bartrasov, you have 3 minutes, Alec. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alec Bertros. Thank you very much for the update on this project. I just wanted to express my support for the visioning study. I do have concerns about how outreach has been done thus far and how we're asking council to take direction based on that limited outreach. I live south of the freeway, and I'm not aware of any HOAs that represent the neighborhoods that I live in. But I am fitting distance to the Verdugo Wash, and there are a lot of people in this area that are particularly park poor that would greatly benefit from an amenity like this. I think a previous caller had mentioned the Chandler Bike Path in Burbank. Somebody had mentioned the LA River Path. We don't have amenities like that here in Glendale. So I applaud the city for pursuing this really transformative project for the city. It is a public benefit that will be enjoyed by the entire city, not any particular neighborhood or HOA community. So I hope that you take that into perspective. And I also appreciate Bradley contextualizing how beneficial this would be in the context of a pandemic. So we're all hunkered down at home. It would be nice to have a public amenity like this, again, especially in the park poor areas in downtown Glendale. Thank you so much.
Kevin Duty, you have 3 minutes. Kevin, go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak today. I don't have a lot of detailed comments to make. I sent an early for the weekend saying how I supported the Fiducial Wash project and the visioning study that's going on. And everything I've heard today during today's council meeting only reinforces that. I think this is an opportunity to create a transformational resource for the city to add to Glendale's growing list of distinctions to be a destination city. People will come from all over to participate on this. the impact on restaurants and shops, the ease to get to the Glendale Community College and the parks would be tremendously affected. I think this is a real wonderful opportunity for the city to transform the resource we have now and make it something that we never imagined it. I look forward to getting increasingly involved in this project. Also, I'll be reaching out to city staff, offering my services as a volunteer and a participant. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to learning more about this in the future. Bye.
Thank you. Kevin?
Madam Mayor, that was the last caller at this time.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you to all the callers for expressing your opinions. We appreciate that. I'd like to, if I may, council members, start with Bradley and ask him if he can give us a report on the meetings that he had at Whiting Woods and Sycamore Woods.
Yes, Mayor and council members, we conducted a meeting in the Sycamore Woods neighborhood and the Whiting Woods neighborhood about a month before then, one in September and October, I believe, as Mr. Moser described. And while we didn't summarize every comment that we heard there, much like we didn't summarize all the comments in our survey, it was, as noted earlier in the meeting, largely around public safety, fire hazard danger, crime, homelessness, things of that nature. And the last couple slides there as part of this presentation were intended to offer some potential solutions to that were discussed at the city level. We had heard comments that they wanted to make sure that we were working with police and with fire. That was actually the intent of that meeting, to be able to understand their concerns or how they may be able to mitigate some of those concerns that those neighborhoods had presented. The question regarding access points, again, those are very generalized by location, or by neighborhood, I guess I would say, not by property. And as we had discussed in that meeting, we're not going to propose an access point that would be in someone's yard. It would not cut through someone's property. We're going to be looking at existing locations. There are properties along this route that we own that we can provide access points to. There are public right-of-ways and bridges that we can provide access points to from there as well. Those were, I wouldn't say all the concerns, but I think the largest and most frequent that we had heard from those meetings.
And my question is, did you really have that many people there, 100 and maybe 80
No.
at another?
I believe in both instances we brought 60 or so printouts and always left with at least some copies behind. I would say the first meeting there were more. I'd say probably closer to 65, 70 people maybe. I didn't have any sign-up sheets. The second meeting was smaller though.
Okay, it seems like a pretty fair representation of the area. Okay, thank you, Bradley. Mr. Calvert, sorry. Okay, let's go to my council members, my colleagues, and we'll look for their questions and comments and direction. And who would like to go first? Councilmember Brockman, would you like to go first?
I have a question.
Okay, Councilmember Agajanian, great.
On
Go ahead.
page 18 of this, what's that deck? Bottom of the deck to the bottom of the river. How high that's gonna be? Approximately, anybody knows at this time?
That would vary on location. This is just to be a generalized image of what that structure could look like. The depth and the height of the walls varies. Jerry, if you have any additional information you would like to add to that, but that's just a generalized image.
I would also defer to our colleagues from your Happold, Chris, from from the engineers. But yeah, like Bradley said, it's really depending of the location. So it's not a homogeneous situation. The entire wash is. In some areas, the capacity, volume-wise, there's more capacity needed for stormwater than in others, right? And we're tailoring the entire design to that data, of course.
But my concern is the bottom of the deck where they walk to the bottom of the bottom of the river. Do you have any idea, regardless wherever it is, there will be a place which will be deck will be closest to the bottom of the river, You have to have some idea. I mean, there are drawings here.
Yeah, I think the lowest point in average is about 6 feet of free space underneath the deck.
Okay. See,
And that's where it gets closest to the bottom. But, I'm just giving up a number because you're asking for it. Once again, it varies a lot in height, and most areas it's lifted up more from the bottom.
I understand, but this is a flood channel, and one day there will be cars in this channel. And will be these days, before we had four-door cars, which are approximately the height of the car is like around less than 6 feet. But new trucks and utility vans, they're way higher. So they are 8 to 10 feet high. So and we have seen lots of these trucks and cars inside channels. So then what will happen if, because the wall of the river, it appears that, I can't read it because it's so small, but it appears at least is 14 or 16 feet high. The wall of the channel I see on the same drawing which I referred. So why it should be that deck should be that low? 6 feet is not enough. That's what I'm trying to say. You say we'll move and we'll change, will be higher or lower, but the height of 6 feet inside the river is not enough.
Mr. Agajanian, if in the spirit of concept, some of these, can we look at your comment as we should be concerned about trucks or vehicles in there, as opposed to what is that height right now? We haven't designed it. We're in the concept phase. So staff would like to, if we could, take your comment as that and make sure that when we get to design, we accommodate for whether it's cars, light trucks, vans, whatever that might be in the wash, either servicing it or in a storm, they somehow get washed in there.
Thank you. But I just want to bring this to your attention. I have worked on different projects. And when the very first time they come up with some ideas, and if you do not consider what I said, it will go along at the end. All of a sudden, we come to the point that everything is done, and now it's very difficult to change. I just wanted to make sure that you will consider there will be cars and trucks and utility vans in this river. So you may take it as my recommendation, as you were suggesting.
Great. We're not designing the project for cars and trucks, by the way.
Okay.
Absolutely not. And I can reassure you that our design, it is already, but we will go much more in finer detail. It of course will be designed to accommodate flood, right? If there's a catastrophic event, our park will flood, and we have to wait for it to drain empty again, right? So that's of course part of the deal. But in our conversation with the LA County Public Works and Corps of Engineers, we gather a lot of data. So and we know that we can base our design on those water levels.
Thank you. The second question I have is the financial aspect of it. What is our situation with the project? Do we have any money, or we are expecting money from somewhere, or where we're gonna apply to get the money? Can anybody answer this? Maybe it's too early, but however is something very important. You can't accomplish anything unless you have the money.
It is early, and as part of this scope of work, the consultant team will be helping to identify external funding sources. That would be our primary pursuit would be to identify outside sources to be able to fund the project. But that is something we won't learn until later on. But that is a key component of this work, is to understand the overall cost. And then we have actually received some preliminary information on identifying outside funding sources, but that will still be elaborated even further as part of this report, and we'll come back to council as well.
And I would add, in addition to construction, we'll also be looking at maintenance, because that's a key component of the project. We've heard that in briefings with you, and we'll make sure that becomes part of our research into the entire project.
Do we know approximately what kind of money we are talking about for this project?
I think we would need to continue to refine the design to understand that a little bit better.
But approximately, at least at a later time, I don't want you to answer now if you don't have the figure. But any project, we have at least to have some idea in ballpark that how much it's going to cost.
And that's what we'll obtain from this level of work. We needed some sort of concept to be able to start developing some sort of cost estimate around. This, again, is kind of our first pass, our first understanding of what could happen in the wash. Therefore, that'll help us, inform us, be able to start to develop a cost estimate.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Okay, any other council members have questions? Councilmember Kasakian, go ahead.
Thank you. Mine is not as much questions as it is comments. I want to echo some of the callers that talked about outreach, and I've mentioned this on a few occasions that when we do outreach as a city, our organizations and our contractors, consultants shouldn't merely be looking to check off a box, but to do the hard work. Oftentimes, the people that are most greatly impacted are the ones that are the hardest to reach because of their lack of availability and other priorities or concerns they may have. It is incumbent upon us to go out of our way to make sure that they're fully aware as to what it is that we're planning on providing. Generally, in the large picture, I do think that the project is a good one, an ambitious one. Of course, devil is always in the details, and that's what we're hoping this next phase will flush out. I've heard concerns as well from residents who are worried about this project coming out right up to their properties and what sort of concerns it may bring to the neighborhood and to their property. Obviously, the pictures that you showed are all very nice and idyllic, and hopefully we can realize some of that within Glendale. But you know, I will approve of the project moving forward in terms of the studies and the outreach and gathering the feedback, and also in terms of the cost. I raised that concern during briefings. I know some of my colleagues may have raised it as well. We want to see what the cost, having this and having someone else pay for it is one thing. Then we have to dig into our pockets to maintain it, and having something to stretch like this, again, which I think conceptually is great. I liken it to the Emerald Necklace in the Boston, Brookline, Jamaica Heights areas. That's very nice to have this type of corridor, to have a separated bike path for residents, but you know, the maintenance of it will have to fall on our shoulders and our current budget, which is stretched as thin as it is. And we're talking about a time when the state and the economy is doing relatively well. God knows what we'll be looking to do if things go south. And I do understand the concept, and I appreciate the explanation that at times when we do have those heavy floods that we will have to shut this down. I thought the images of I guess that was a Sears parking lot that was converted in Georgia, but I thought that was very interesting, very telling. And hopefully it's something that we can incorporate as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brotman.
Yes, thank you. So let me see, let me gather my comments here. We're not planning on running cars down in the wash, are we?
Correct. No automobiles.
Except during construction. I imagine we'll have some down there during construction. So yeah, I have also heard a lot of concern, particularly in Whiting Woods, Sycamore Woods, and areas along the northern edge. And it is, and I go there a lot. There's a dog park in Crescenta Valley Park, which I take my dog to very frequently, and we often walk down along Mountain Oaks and along the Wash. And I know it's a very quiet place, and I can understand the concern of the people that live there about having, you know, something that really could be a big draw. I mean, if we do it right, it would be a really big draw for Glendale, and having that kind of disturb the quietude that they enjoy now. So, you know, I definitely, you know, want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to work with those folks and figure out how we can make this something that they're excited about. That'll be really where we come to the point where we have a winning project. I mean, first I want to congratulate staff and the folks at Melk, exclamation mark Melk.
That's right.
I remember you explained that to us. You explained it to us. And also, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right, Howell. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
No exclamation point there.
Okay. I think that the quality of the work that we see in the report is really outstanding. Given the short amount of time that you've been working on this, I feel like it's only been 6 or 9 months at the most. I don't think it's been very long. But it's a very detailed and thorough report. I haven't gotten through all of it, but I did read about 2/3 pretty carefully, and I want to congratulate staff for having selected, I think, you know, a great team. It was a really wise selection. So I like the general vision, and what I like about it is that, you know, I started off thinking of this as a bike path and a walking path, and obviously as active transportation kind of corridor, it is very, very important. I'm like some of the callers, or one of the callers, am trying more and more to do what I need to do around the city on a bike, not get in my car. And we don't have a connected network in this city. And there was a recent LA Times article which had an analogy which I thought was really good. It was like, if we had the 5 and the 134 and the 2 not actually connect, but you had to get off of one and go on a dirt road with potholes to get on the next segment, how many people would take the freeway system? And that's what it's like for our bike network. You have a patch that may be safe, and then you're going and you're having to risk your life to get into the next segment that's safe. And when people ask, why don't we have more people riding their bikes to do utilitarian tasks? That's the reason. It's just not safe. So this would act as a really important spine connecting some critical parts of our city. And that I think is of huge value, not only to the people that bike, of course, but to the people that can't for whatever reason or don't want to. They're in their cars. This could take away pressure on parking. It takes away pressure on congestion. So I think it's an unalloyed good. But what I like about the vision is how it really develops these other benefits that we get. The biological benefits from you know, groundwater replenishment, the wildlife corridor, opportunities, you know, habitat restoration, impacts on the urban heat island effect with all the planting, and just more open space, park space, meeting space, fun places to play and to interact as a community. I think all these things, the project, you know, being all these things is really what we want. That's what's going to really make it very special. So I'm excited about it, you know, with the caveat that we really need to make sure that everybody is on board. And I think we can. I do think we can. I don't think the answer is no to the project. I think the answer is let's proceed cautiously and bring everybody along. One thing on that soft river bottom and what one of the callers mentioned, and I forget the organization that he represents, but I know he's on the advisory team. But You know, I heard that you know, it's maybe not feasible to have a soft bottom and to restore it to its kind of riparian, you know, to a riparian habitat situation. But I'm hoping that we can have places along the wash where we allow water to, you know, infiltrate into the ground, because, you know, we all know, everyone on council has talked about this, as we move forward, you know, water reliability is going to be an issue for us with the increasing droughts that we're facing because of climate change. So to the extent that we can capture any water and replenish the aquifers that we do get, I think 30 or 40% of our water from those aquifers, that's of huge economic value and sustainability value. So I hope there are approaches to that we can pursue.
If I may, Councilman Brotman, keep in mind that let's say the current channel, right, the casing for the stormwater, the bottom of it sits below your groundwater level of the city. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what is that? What are the implications, though?
Which means if you make a hole in the bottom of the, let's say, quote, bathtub, then the water starts seeping into the channel.
Okay, so, well, maybe we have to make holes up higher. I don't know. I just say that we should really focus on what we can do to prevent what we have and what we've had since the 30s. I guess is just we try to push any of the water out into the river and into the ocean, and we don't want to lose that. So whatever we can do there, I would like us to look at that. The other thing is, I think, you know, and somewhat addressing some of the concerns in the northern segment is, you know, if we can think of building this out kind of from the LA River, Confluence Park area, and then going to the east and then going to the north, because, you know, this is going to take many, many years. And that way, you know, we can have a, you know, a proof of concept, you know, that we're living and that we're experiencing, we're seeing the safety issues and we're seeing the, you know, other potential nuisance issues. And by the time we're ready to get to those northern reaches, you know, we have a lot more experience and we can speak more authoritatively about, you know, how we're going to address some of these concerns. So I would like us to think of it in those terms where, you know, obviously we have the greatest population density, you know, around that Pelinconi area where we would be starting, and then along the wash as it goes towards the east. And I think the last thing I wanted to say is I really want to get that ride, and I know my sustainability appointee and my transportation commission appointees would be thrilled because we've talked about it. So as soon as that's an opportunity, sign us up. I really want to get on a bike and I want to ride it from one end to the other.
We'll do it together. Bradley, you heard the man.
But thank you very much. I think we're on the right track. With the caveat, you know, a lot more outreach and really focused on those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some questions, if I may. I'm really concerned about the residents in Whiting Woods and Sycamore Woods. You know, it's one thing to walk that path along the wash. It's another thing to go into the homes and see the proximity of the wash, the wall, and their backyards. So my question to you is, you mentioned, I think, that the walls are 14 to 16 feet high. Is that correct? According to Mr. Agajanian, Councilmember Agajanian's.
They're lower in that area.
They're lower in that area. And so then if you have the bridge at, let's say, you said 10 feet, maybe is the lowest, then that would practically be in their backyards. I mean, that's a concern of mine, and I think it's a concern of theirs. Because if you build this up, and people can actually jump from the path to their backyards, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how are you planning do you have any plans on mitigating that problem?
All I can say, and thank you for your remark and for echoing that concern of course, we're very sensitive to that concern, and but I can assure you, first of all, that the images that we show were, let's say, speculative conditions, right? So what can people, let's say, expect from a designed version of the current wash? There's no, let's say, pinpointed locational element in those visualizations. Of course, we will not make a design that is either going through people's backyards or not even sort of impacting any sort of view out from their backyards to disturb what the current view is. Basically, everything will be nicely tailored. There's enough room and enough possibilities for having these access points located in a way that it doesn't disturb anybody's, let's say, private property. We're very mindful of that.
Well, because I can see that this definitely has potential. I mean, great potential on so many levels, but it also has the potential of ruining people's quality of life. Let me ask you this.
And we want to do the opposite.
Maybe this is for Mr. Calvert. This Burbank project that they're talking about, does it go through neighborhoods like this one is going to go through?
We would have to take a look at
like this.
We would have to take a look at that project specifically. We have actually done research regarding the relationships of these kind of projects, neighborhoods, backyards, particularly around the concept of crime. And thus far, every single one that we've looked at has shown no increase whatsoever in any crime. It's either held crime rates consistent in the neighborhoods, and we've looked at projects from Seattle to Madison, Wisconsin, to Charlotte, North Carolina, to many other places. And every one of their studies have indicated either the crime rate remains the same or it actually goes down. I think if I can go back to your original point, that concern about views and access to neighborhoods, if we look at those renderings, you'll notice that there is space. If someone's in the center of that wash, there is space with vegetation and planting. We will approach that design in a manner so that it does not, even if it is a little higher than other locations, that does not become an access point to someone's yard. There are other design solutions that we could look at and incorporate into that. And what we would like to do is be able to go and have those conversations with those neighborhoods and see if those solutions are something that would be, would mitigate their concerns. We've had some of the similar conversations with Oakmont Country Club, and they don't want people to be able to access obviously their facility. We can take some of those similar approaches and maybe incorporate those elsewhere where there are those kind of concerns.
Okay,
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Pavel, I think that's a great idea, and I'd be sure that there's representation from that Verdugo Wash Coalition that's involved in your outreach and in any future talks that you have with them. So we don't know about that one in Burbank. Okay. Other question: how do you shut down the facility? Do you just go through and close every entrance, or how do you shut it down? You say, "Oh, we'll shut it down."
That would have to be the approach. We would have to secure the access points, much like we would close any other facility, or in the event if there is some sort of a rain event such as today would be a good example. And that is something that will pose a challenge. We'll have to figure out what's the cost of that, what's the actual labor that would have to go into doing something like that, and we'll have to bring back alternatives on how to address that.
Okay. And finally, the question of safety, and this is going to be so much safer than our streets. So you have cyclists, you have pedestrians, now we have police motorcycles. Are we going to have bike lanes? Are you planning on bike lanes so that the cyclists don't run over the pedestrians and et cetera? I mean, this putting all of this multimodal on one pathway, and I don't know, depending on how wide it is, you're going to have to incorporate some sort of lanes for each, aren't you? Or do you plan on, is that something you're looking at?
there is going to have to be consideration for that. I'll go to the police motorcycle comment first. That's really for emergencies only. That's not intended for them to patrol the facility on a motorcycle. It's the ability for an officer to be able to get into the wash quickly and address any situation that may need to be. They wouldn't patrol necessarily by that means. If you look at some of the renderings in the wider sections, you'll see that there's kind of two pavement markings. And the idea that could come from that is that we could start to separate pedestrians and cyclists where possible. There may not be locations where we are wide enough, and we may have to introduce rules about dismounting or speed or something along those lines when you get further north.
Yeah, we know how well everybody listens to our rules and our laws. I'm sorry, that was facetious. So therefore, the police motorcycle is not mitigation for safety. It's just in case something happens.
It's an opportunity for them to get in there if they need to. We wouldn't imagine motorcycles riding up and down on a consistent basis, but they could come in there, whether it's an emergency or maybe it's a spot check or something along those lines.
Okay. Well, and thank you for the answers and for listening to my questions and answering them. So,
sorry, this is Francesco Cerrone from Borough Howell. I'm sorry, I'm in New York City. I'm on the street. I wanted to respond about the question about the concern of safety of combining multiple modes. That's a very important aspect, and I'm glad that it was raised because that's exactly a type of analysis that we are working together with Milk and with the city. There are different ways to approach that aspect, and it may vary depending on the location and the type of user that we expect for different stretches of the wash. In some of the points, the space availability might allow for providing separate paths. In other points, we might need to have some shared solutions in which some of these different type of mobility share the space. How we resolve the conflict, we resolve through design, and there are ways in which, depending on the location and type of user, we might use a particular wide path, but also rely upon different type of colors, different type of changing in pavement. These are all solutions that have been proved to be effective in many projects that we worked in the past, and that we are close monitoring to use the best practice and the best possible example to inform the design of the Verdugo wash.
Thank you, Francesco. And sorry, Francesco Cerrone from Borough Howell is actually, and I'm happy he was chiming in, is one of the nation's leading mobility specialists. So we're very pleased to have him on board of our team.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're in safe hands, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's see. Finally, did have another comment here. Oh, I wanted to know one more question about, in there are places in the wash along that path, there are huge boulders. Then do you just build higher than the boulders? You're not going to be blowing them up or anything, are you? Moving them, well, not moving them, but I mean, what's the plan? Or are you going to try to avoid them? That's probably a better.
Sorry, boulders?
Yeah, big rocks. I mean, big.
You mean the sculptural elements that Jerry you were showing?
Oh, in our design?
No. Natural in the wash. Up north, I've seen some pretty big rocks and boulders, and you just build above them. Correct?
There currently are not any large boulders in that space. As you get further down to the Confluence River, maybe there's some there, but as you go further up, there are no large boulders in that space right now.
Okay, but if you encounter them, you just build around them. There's not going to be like any explosives being used for.
No.
Absolutely,
I just got to look out for everybody that's that's near this project, and the neighbors are really, the residents are very, very important, and I just want to make sure that those people that live in Whiting Woods and Sycamore and West Glendale are assured that their issues are going to be met, that they're going to be included in the outreach, and that I think it's a good idea to have these presentations in multi-languages. We do have a lot of residents that are not English speaking, so I think that was a good idea. But I think this is transformative. It would transform this wash into something that could be absolutely extraordinary. And so I'm also, and I'm in favor of the project. I just want to make sure that all of these issues, small and large, are mitigated, and that there aren't any real negative impacts to our residents, that they feel secure and safe, not being in it, but living around it. And
Absolutely.
that's very, very important.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Besides that, I hope that you're joining us and Councilman Brockman and others on our field trip.
I can walk it. I'm not biking it. I can walk it. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Oh, you have to try my.
No promises. No
You
promises.
have to try my electric bike, and then you'll enjoy that.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see. Okay. The only one, Councilmember Agajanian, did you have any comments, or were you satisfied with your question?
Hold on. I'm okay with it. I have no more comments.
Okay. All right. Then we're ready, I guess, for a motion.
Okay, if
on this,
anybody
note
wants to
file.
move it, otherwise, let's move the item.
The visioning process. Okay. Is there Mr. Calvert, did you get enough input from us?
We did, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and let's have a roll call, please, on the
Councilmember
file.
Agajanian?
Yes.
Brotman?
Yes.
Kasakian?
Yes.
Najarian? And Mayor Devine?
Yes. Okay, then. Is there a motion? What's next, please?
Adjournment?
Move to
Do I have a
adjourn.
motion?
Is there a
Can't
second?
hear.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second from Kasakian. Thank you. We are adjourned at 3:54. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melk and Associates. Okay. All righty, I'm going to call to order the Glendale City Council meeting for December 14th at 3:55. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian?
Present.
Brotman?
Here.
Kasakian?
Here.
Najarian? And Mayor Devine?
Here. What's next, please?
One would be closed session. 1A, public employee performance evaluation, city manager. 1B, conference with labor negotiators. The city designated negotiators attending the closed session are Mayor Paula Devine and City Attorney Michael J. Garcia. Unrepresented employee position, city manager. C, conference with real property negotiators. Property location 116 West California Avenue. Negotiating parties, Glendale Arts. City negotiators attending the closed session are Rubik Kalanian, Michael J. Garcia, Jillian Van Meiden, Philip Lanzafame, Michelle Flynn, Bradley Calvert, and Tamar Saad. Instructions to negotiators will concern the price and terms for the lease of property. D would be conference with real property negotiators. City negotiators attending the closed session are Rubik Kalanian, Phil Lanzafame, Bradley Calvert, Tamar Saad, Michelle Flynn, Michael J. Garcia, and Jillian Van Meiden. Property location 216 South Brand Boulevard. Negotiating parties, Museum of Neon Arts. Instructions to negotiators will concern the price and terms for the lease of property.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, do you expect to be reporting out on any of these items?
Madam Mayor, we may be reporting on item 1D, and just note for the record that it'll be Mr. Bradford sitting on both closed sessions on items C and D instead
All
of
right,
Michelle
thank
Flynn.
you. Thank you. All righty. Okay, and with that, we are recessed to closed session. Thank you all.